Shout out to the monkey gang, the great apes. At the club swinging, they asking for my singing. She peeling the banana backstage. What a feeling, what a feeling. Monkey gang chilling. What a feeling, king of the top villain.
Jujutsu Kaisen as a series has found a lot of popularity recently, notably with its anime adaptation by Studio Mappa. It's been on the mind of a lot of anime and manga fans. Out of everything that's discussed regarding the series, one topic, or rather one character, always seems to be the subject of conversation: Jujutsu Kaisen's iconic sensei Satoru Gojo. While generally Gojo appears to be pretty universally loved by everybody who watches or reads it, a lot of people seem to think that Gojo lacks character writing or will maybe be fleshed out later in the story because he's missing it somehow, claiming all there is to him is being badass and strong. I personally could not disagree more, so with this video, I'm gonna go over Satoru Gojo and what makes him, in my opinion, one of the best characters in current generation of Shonen Jump manga. This will be my first and only spoiler warning for the manga up to the chapter on the screen. I also want to mention that Jujutsu Kaisen is, as of this recording, not yet completed, and thus my analysis may be proven incorrect with things that happen later in the manga. I don't claim any of this to be factual, it's obviously just based on my opinion reading the manga extensively, so without any further ado, let's get right into it. When creating Gojo's character, the author, Gege Akutami, said that he made his character as a representation of a specific concept, that being the Paroxysm of Force. Now, if you're like me and had no idea what the word paroxysm meant prior to this video, I'll explain. Paroxysm is, according to the Oxford Dictionary, a sudden attack or outburst of a particular emotion or activity. In Gojo's case, that would basically mean he was created as the concept of an uncontrollable outburst of force, which in my opinion was something Gege handled magnificently. But why this concept is so important will become much more apparent when we go into the next section, his childhood. Satoru Gojo's birth was not just the birth of another member of one of the three great families of Jujutsu, it was a calamity completely unseen in the last century. You see, Gojo was born not only with the limitless curse technique, but also the 6 eyes, two extremely rare and powerful abilities that a Jujutsu sorcerer can wield. This completely changed the entire balance of power in the world, making the Jujutsu sorcerers go from a position where they constantly struggled to maintain society functioning against curses, to curses and cursed users literally hiding in the shadows in fear of this new god of sorcerers that had been born. Besides this information, we don't know much of Gojo's childhood or of that period in time in the Jujutsu Kaisen world, but there are conclusions we can reach based on a few educated guesses using context given to us. First off, we know that Gojo most likely was already ridiculously strong since he was a child. Since he mentions to Megumi that curse techniques awaken from ages 4 to 6, and because he told Yuji that a Jujutsu sorcerer's powers are about 80% innate talent, requiring training only to refine your abilities to the max. But what does this mean exactly for Gojo and his childhood? Well, based on the way that Gojo is in the beginning of the Star Plasma Vessel arc, which I'll go over later in the video, we can assume that Gojo most likely grew to resent authority and people he deemed weak due to being so powerful from a young age. Without there being anyone even remotely at his level, there was likely no one that could instill any sense of discipline onto Gojo, resulting in him growing up as a very disrespectful and disobedient teenager. When we begin the Star Plasma Vessel arc, we see Gojo being someone extremely full of himself and his own creeds. Gojo at this point in his life not only believes he is absolutely invincible, but he's also completely apathetic, showing no interest or care for anyone who he deems weak. Gege really nails down how alienated Gojo is from the rest of the world, not only through his power, but his appearance. Gojo's appearance is so stunning that he has women fighting over him at the first sight of him, and most impressively, this man is 6'3". A moment of silence for my short kings. And while this may seem superficial, it only helps to reaffirm the idea that he is perfect and invincible. His disdain for the weak is shown the best when Gojo mocks his best friend Geto for claiming that the strong have their power so that they can protect the weak, calling an attitude like that self-righteous garbage. Things start to change after Gojo and Geto are given their mission to secure and erase Riko Amanai. While at first the two think the mission will be simply escorting Riko to school, they are informed that their true mission is to protect her in the final days of her life before she is merged with Master Tengen, effectively ceasing to be herself. It is in this specific condition that Gojo is forced to actually pay attention to people that were simply weak and fragile, and over the course of their mission, a bond between all of them was formed, allowing Gojo to finally care for someone who was truly weak. Gojo was so invested in Riko's happiness that he stayed awake for days on end alert, just so he could guarantee her final days were filled with joy, despite him insisting otherwise, saying it was just for safety's sake. Gojo even went as far as to decide with Geto that if Riko was not willing to merge with Master Tengen, they would secure her future, which they would be able to do because they are the strongest. But when everything seemed at its best, reality came knocking as Toji Zenin arrives in the scene, destroying Gojo and killing Riko. Now, you'd think that getting destroyed the way he was would humble someone greatly, but surviving such a savage attack and waking up even stronger merely reinforced and validated his belief, which is why Gojo directly states he was not angry or trying to avenge her when fighting Toji. He was merely feeling and indulging in his own invincibility. Throughout heaven and earth, he alone is the honored one. After defeating Toji and having his power rush settle down, he recovers Riko's body and is joined by Geto as the Star Vessel Association members applaud Riko's death. Gojo's instant response is to ask Geto if he wants to kill all of them. This makes sense considering someone growing up in the way Gojo did would have terrible coping mechanisms, seeing as he likely never had to suffer any adversities or face any situations that would cause them grief. They end up letting the people live after Geto convinces Gojo not to kill them. A year goes by after the Star Plasma Vessel mission and Gojo goes through all of it training, finally becoming, as Geto calls him, the strongest. Though there is no hard evidence to prove this, considering how much more powerful he became in so little time, I would guess this is the first time he ever did any serious training in his life. The critical failure in the Star Plasma Vessel mission is more than likely the reason for this sudden decision to train. Sometime later, Gojo hears of his best friend's turn from a Jujutsu sorcerer to a curse user and his massacre of an entire village of non-sorcerers. And now, we've come to a turning point, where the two best friends have found themselves having completely inverted their points of view regarding the weak. While Geto originally bound himself too much to the creeds he was taught by Jujutsu Society, he came to realize that by abandoning them was the best way to create meaningful, lasting change in the world for the better. When Gojo confronts Geto about this new goal, rage is in his eyes as he can't comprehend why someone would try something as impossible as killing all non-sorcerers to create a world without curses. This is when he's hit with words that make him rethink his entire life. You could do it, Satoru. You're trying to convince me that it's impossible when you yourself could do it. Are you the strongest because you are Satoru Gojo, or are you Satoru Gojo because you are the strongest? Now, a lot of people think this is just wordplay from Geto's part, but the line actually carries a much deeper meaning. Being the strongest because you are who you are means that the strongest is a characteristic of you. You retain your individual identity outside of your power. While being you because you are the strongest implies that there is nothing to you outside of your power. That is the depth of your individuality, being powerful. These words hit Gojo like a truck when he comes to realize that despite all of his power, he has not brought any change to the world because of the actions he's taken. He's only brought change to the world by virtue of being who he is. This stunned Gojo to a degree that he was unable to kill his friend there, because he likely realized that if he killed Geto right there, he would only be proving him right. This is the reason why the first question he asks Principal Yaga after Geto leaves is, "Sensei, I'm strong, right?" Followed by, "It looks like just being strong isn't enough. I can only save those who are prepared to be saved." Now, we finally reach the point where we see Gojo in Jujutsu Kaisen and its prequel, Jujutsu Kaisen 0. Side note that I heavily recommend reading this prequel as it's not only bound to become relevant in the later parts of the manga, but it's just a really solid quick read with only 4 chapters. But I digress. I'm sure that given 10 years have passed, you'd expect Gojo to have changed a lot from his teenage years, especially after his harsh conversation with Geto. But for the most part, you'd be wrong. Gojo still sees himself as invincible and pretty much infallible, not really taking anything seriously ever. Though he did not visibly change, Gojo did at least make some progress in his own discovery of a goal to make meaningful, lasting, and positive change in the world. Gojo deems the elders who control the Jujutsu world cowards, too concerned with traditions and bloodlines and too proud to be in control of anything. He also acknowledges that killing them would be all too easy of a task, which wouldn't really amount to anything as other people just as bad would take their places. Interestingly enough, Gojo has decided that his solution to reset the Jujutsu society is not from the top down, but instead from the bottom up, through education. Gojo has decided to foster and raise a new, stronger and more intelligent generation of Jujutsu sorcerers to become his allies in the future. This way, he can reform the Jujutsu society from the ground up. It's interesting and almost ironic that the person who has the power to impose any form of will he could possibly like into the world would resort to an approach that relies so much on others. This does, however, appear to be the logical progression of his newly attained ideology in the Star Plasma Vessel arc, that he cannot save people who are not prepared to be saved. So, he came to the conclusion that he must prepare the next generation to save themselves from the ignorance of the current elders in control of the Jujutsu society. This is a really good take from the author in my opinion, as it makes Gojo's goal be completely paradoxical with his own nature. Gojo himself says he's not the teacher type, but even more interestingly, there's a quote from the False Ghetto saying, "Do you know when Satoru Gojo is in his element? When he's alone. It doesn't matter who that sorcerer is, anyone who fights alongside him just gets in the way." It's worth noting that this quote was used in the context of fighting, but I do think it's insightful regarding Gojo's own disposition regarding people in general. Gojo is egotistical and not at all a team player. This predisposition to believe himself invincible is what causes Gojo to not have a single major fight in the series with a truly victorious outcome. Now you might be saying, but Fiction Ape, besides one fight, he pretty much crushed everyone he fought in the series. While I would generally say that you're right if you're taking it in the context of a simple fight, you'd be wrong when noticing the repercussions of all the fights he participates in. To list some of the negative outcomes. With Jogo, he destroys him but ultimately allows Hanami to rescue Jogo and escape without gaining any meaningful information. With Jogo being a curse that would later not only feed Yuji 10 fingers of Sukuna at once, causing Sukuna to massacre countless civilians, but Jogo himself was responsible for the deaths of many people. As for his fight with Hanami, he not only let Hanami escape, but was so focused in coming in to kick ass and show off that he allowed Mahito, who was outside the Tobari and within his reach, to steal 6 fingers that were on campus. Finally, in the Star Vessel arc, we see Gojo believe so much in his invincibility he overworked himself, allowing Toji to absolutely tear him apart and kill Riko. Despite coming back stronger and killing Toji, he still let Riko die and failed the mission. Gojo might be a god in the Jujutsu world, but he has been consistently powerless to make change or win when it matters most. This is made painfully apparent when Gojo is sealed, and he appears to be resting easily because he believes this new generation is more than ready for the mission at hand. But unfortunately, so far, they haven't been faring anywhere close to well, and with the amount of casualties that have taken place, even if they survive and rescue Gojo, you can hardly say that the Jujutsu sorcerers won, considering their main goal is to protect the lives of non-sorcerers. Satoru Gojo is, in my opinion, a brilliant character. Gege Akutami managed to make a character who's not only a masterclass in how to write an overpowered character, being able to balance his power with clever writing tactics while not copping out on how powerful he truly is, by introducing a more powerful character every other arc, allowing him to remain the strongest. This made Gojo serve as a safety net for the story, similar to what Horikoshi did with All Might for My Hero Academia, causing the story's tone and stakes to severely change once Gojo is removed from the story and is sealed, giving a sense of fragility and vulnerability to the story. Satoru Gojo is a brilliant character, and there's a reason why he's so universally loved by the Jujutsu Kaisen community, except the author himself, which apparently hates Gojo, funnily enough. Gojo explores the theme of being unparalleled in power, and how that affects not only those around them in a literal sense, but what kind of a human would be created being raised in these conditions, bringing a perfect touch of realism and human flaws. And that's about a wrap for my analysis on Satoru Gojo's character. I'd like to remind everybody that as of writing this script, the manga is still only on chapter 127 in the middle of the Shibuya arc. I personally don't think Gojo is going to come back for a while into the story, which is why I chose to do this analysis now of all times. I'd once again like to remind everybody that watched the video until the end that this is still just my opinion based on countless days reading and rereading Jujutsu Kaisen, so if you disagree, that's perfectly okay, and I encourage you to leave a comment explaining why that is the case. Thank you all for watching the video until the end. This one was in the making for a long time. If you enjoyed, please make sure to leave a like and share the video with anyone who you think might be interested. If you like what I do and want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell button. It'd be greatly appreciated. And until next time, Fiction Ape out the gate.